Let's do it.
All right, 6 o'clock, we're going to kick it off. Welcome to your city council. Thanks for coming, y'all. We have Councilor Cunahan online. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to all put our cell phones on mute. And the next thing we're going to do is take just a moment to realize that as we do business here, we're doing it on unceded land. It's been populated for tens of thousands of years before my ancestors came, and that's on my mind. Let's pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Ordinarily, we would recess now to do the urban renewal agenda, but because we have 2 esteemed speakers, we're going to bump the line. So Mike Shen, come on up, please. Yes. Yes.
Simpson from the Lions Club was going to join me, but I think he thought we were on a little later. So you'll probably show up here in a little bit. So anyway, but you've got your packets from that we have a design on Man Park. Is Adam on at all? Is he on yet?
He is.
He is on. Okay. All right. Okay. So I think what I'll do is just kind of give you an idea of what we're planning to do. And then if you have any questions and stuff, then I'll try to answer them for you. But this is a Lions Club project, Hood River Lions Club project that we wanted to help out with some of the playgrounds in the city. Now, this kind of falls into place with what we've kind of already done with Jackson Park. As you know, we've invested over $300,000 into Jackson Park already, with the stage and the handicap parking, the stairs going down and all that kind of stuff. But there's another, before I get into this, I will mention that we'll be back next year with another proposal for Jackson Park. We would like to expand the playground there for handicapped children and toddlers. There's nothing for handicapped kids at all. And so the design would be for kids in wheelchairs and other things that, they're providing handicaps for kids that they can participate in that playground as well. So that's what's coming.
Thank you. Please express our gratitude to the club, Mike.
I will. I'll do that.
Generous.
Yes. Thank you. We're happy to do it. We're happy to do it. And you just are the recipients of all that generosity. So we've chosen the parks, basically. Yeah. So anyway, Man Park is the objective here tonight. You'll see the layout on the front page there. There's basically 4 components. You've got the structure, the playground structure that would be for, I would say, probably ages 5 and up, kind of thing. So it's got a lot of climbing apparatus and all kinds of things that the kids, I think, would have a lot of fun with. Then there's the structure in the middle is a toddler structure, and then there's that blob, the kind of weird looking thing on the far right bottom is a merry-go-round. Okay, and then you've got the swings. We've reduced that down. We had 8 swings in there, and because of the size of the footprint of it, due to code, you have to have so much spacing in between these different structures. It was quite large, and even taking off 2 swings made a big impact on that footprint. And then you see that there's 3 benches for people to sit. Those are included in this. Those are the resin and steel post type benches that'll be installed in there. Okay. So in the swing set, you'll see that there's one odd looking swing on the end. That's called a parent-child swing. So the parent gets in the swing with them, and it could also be for handicapped children as well. It's all adaptable for that. And then you just kind of, turn the pages there. It kind of gives you a different viewpoints of the structures and stuff. It's pretty self-explanatory until we get to, let me see what page I'm dealing with here. where I want to go, and they're not numbered, unfortunately. I'll get there. Okay, if you go to probably about 6 pages to the back, from the very back, you'll see a little different layout of it. And then if you turn the page, this one, it looks like an ink blob on a psychological test, but that kind of gives you all of the apparatus that is part of that playground structure. Yeah, let's see what else. Okay, here, this thing here, that page shows you the toddler structure a little more in detail there. By the way, this was all designed by the Burke Company, which we had chosen. We dealt with a number of companies that looked at different playground options. This is the one we chose because they not only we thought they were the best price, but they seemed to be the most easy to deal with. I guess that would be the way I describe that. Some of them could care. I got the impression some of them could care less if they got our business or not, and they must be really busy to ignore you. But we had a few companies ignore us, and that was goodbye. Okay, so there's more details in this. Abigail, you've got a more detailed copy. You got the warranty and all that stuff for the equipment and so forth. And now let me get into the financial part of this. What the club is going to do is we're going to send you a check for $82,000. Now that's going to cover the cost of the equipment and the installation. Burke Company will come and install it. That brings the warranty into play. So you don't have anything to do with that. The city would not put it together. And then there's a little bit of extra money in there for the border. That black line going around it is going to be a concrete border. And then Adam is going to, he is requesting that you do a poured in place rubber surface. Okay, so it has to have a border enough to hold that in because it's liquid when it comes in. So it has to hold that. And so the money that the Lions will give the city would also have a little bit on that concrete border, is Adam on or not? Is he on? He's on. Okay. I think, can you hear me okay or not? Adam,
Yes.
Did you say the border was about $7,200?
The border was just under $8,000.
Okay, so with the 82,000 that we are going to write a check to the city of Hood River, there's a little bit of not just the installation and equipment, but there's a little bit extra in there to help for that concrete border. Okay, and then the poured in place product is up to you guys how you want to handle that. That would be part of your budget, and I think you've already allocated a considerable amount for that. It's really it's nice to have something like that because it's maintenance free basically, and it's safe. What originally in this proposal they had put in engineered wood fiber, and then Adam felt that it would be better if we had something like the poured in place product instead. So you'll see that if you look at that, you'll see it in there that it's this particular bid had that in there, and we're just sending more money to you to cover the equipment, as I said, all of the installation costs and a little bit for that concrete border. Probably about $5,000, I think. And if it's 8, so you'll have about 3,000 to cover on that. That's the way I'm figuring it. I hope I'm correct, but that's what it is. Okay, so the one thing I want to tell you is that Burke Company has been warning us on the equipment because just like everything else, the first of the year increases. And if you don't order the equipment by the end of December, you're gonna probably end up paying another $500, $600, $700, which you probably don't want to do. If you can order it now, we're gonna get you a check as soon as we can. I mean, I can probably get a check to you this week even. So you can, I think you can just order everything. Or unless you want me to place the order and just say the city of Hood River is gonna pay for it. Do you want me to do it that way?
Abigail, what would you like?
I think Adam has been talking to you about this, but I think, I'm not sure. I think it was, you would write us a check and then we would place the order. But
Yes, you're paying
Yeah.
for it. That way it gives you the warranty aspect
Right.
of it as well, because if we pay for it,
right,
then that's the warranties with us.
yeah,
We don't want that.
yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
Adam, do you have anything, is there anything you need from us, Adam, any direction?
So I've spoke with Mike about the payment and the warranty, and yes, it would be easier if we place the order and then the Lions Club cut the city a check. And I've talked with Chris about that as well.
Great.
Okay, so again, the main thing is to get it ordered before the end of the year.
Got it.
And if, like I said, if you want me, Abigail, if you want me to order it, I can order it and then they'll just say you're paying for it.
Oh,
They'll
gotcha.
invoice you. You want me to do that? And that way it gets ordered?
I'm leaving that up to Adam.
Adam, what do you want to
We
do?
can talk
Mike,
about this offline.
Yep, Mike, I'll take care of this with you this week.
Okay, that sounds fair enough, fair enough.
Mike, Councilor Rivera has a question.
Thank you, Mike. So understand the installation or the ordering to take place as soon as possible. When would this actually be installed?
Adam, that's your question.
It'll be installed as soon as we can get on Man Park. So I know it's a couple of months out just getting the playground equipment. So as soon as we can get on Man Park this spring, we'll get in there and we'll do the prep on the site, and then the install team will install the playground equipment, and then we'll do the prep for the pour in place, and then the folks with the pour and play will come out and install that. So basically, as soon as we can get on the grass without making a huge mess at Man Park, we'll get on it.
How many weeks do you think the neighborhood will be locked down to the park, Adam?
I can't give you like a firm answer on that as far as timeline goes. I do know that just based on ordering the equipment, that we should be able to get the timeline with the pour in place folks and the install folks, tighten that timeline up. But as far as like an actual how many days, at this point, I cannot tell you like an exact number of days that the park will be shut down.
Okay, thank you. Megan.
Thank you for coming, Mike. I have a couple questions and they may be for you or for Adam, but the footprint of this, is this similar to the footprint of the existing structures? Is this covering the whole lot of Man Park?
This is, well, that's a good question. I think it's might be a little bigger than the footprint that's currently there, because there really is no border on what's there.
Right.
It's just, you got an old structure with a slide, and then you've got the merry-go-round, and then you got some swings. But there's really no border to say this is the footprint of that.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess is this covering the whole lot, or will there still be open grass?
Oh, there'll be a lot of open grass, a lot of open grass. I don't think it's gonna cover any more space than what you'd expect for what's there now.
Okay.
Yeah, but it'll be safe equipment, it'll be new equipment, and I think it'll draw a lot of kids and families into that park that you've never seen before.
Awesome. And then when you're saying concrete border, is that like a 6-inch thing, or like it's not a wall?
Adam?
Obviously.
It's a 16x6 concrete border that'll be just exposed enough to get the softball in there and kind of make a containment area, but still ADA accessible.
Say 16 inches, or that some of it's buried?
Yeah, buried. Yeah. No, it's buried. Yeah, the majority of it will be buried. There'll be maybe 3 inches of it that stick above ground.
Okay, Awesome.
That's a good point, though. You don't want a wall.
I was just trying to picture it and I.
Yeah,
wrong there. And then, I guess Adam and Abigail, the Portland Place, is that cost about what we had estimated or put in the budget for this year? Or roughly? Yeah, it would be this year.
Yeah, so we had $77,000 budgeted for this year. The Pour in Place came in at 86,000, and I've been working with Chris as well on that. And I'll be back to talk to council about the overage on the Pour in Place.
Okay, thank you.
Adam, there's a couple of trees that are there. There's also a bench over on like the right-hand side. Would the trees be removed in order to accommodate this new expanded structure?
No
Okay.
trees will be removed. And I think, like Mike had mentioned, there's a merry-go-round, a swing set, and a slide there now. The new structure would basically encompass what that is covering right now. Those are kind of spread out in an area. So it would just be a more kind of uniform fitting setup with this, with the new playground equipment.
Okay, thank you.
The park itself has more potential if it was flat. It's not quite flat, but I mean, you could actually have a kid's soccer field on one end of it, even with this there. But it slopes, you know, so that it would not be fair for the kids to run uphill, you know, for half a game, I guess, but yeah. But that's really impossible to go in and rip all that out and for that, when probably not necessary. But a lot of green grass still will remain, yeah.
Well, thank you so much again to the club and to you, Mike, for your leadership on this and added to the list of zillion projects you spearheaded, and we sure appreciate it.
We will be back next year, just expect for the Jackson Park project. It won't be as extensive as this, because it's we're proposing a park that's gonna be just to the east of the restrooms.
Okay,
Okay, and that there's a little flat area there.
Yep.
That's where we're proposing to put the new handicapped and toddler equipment. And we're also looking at a tubular slide that's using the topography of the hillside, where they can actually go into this tube and slide down in a tube down the hill. And yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Great.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, may I make one more
yes, you may.
comment? Thank you. I think we're done with this. Are we done with that?
I think we're done with this.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. I'm gonna put on a different hat. The Education Foundation is bringing Dionne Warwick to Hood River in
Oh.
April. And I've got some posters here that if any of you have any place to put them,
Great, if you leave those with Abigail, we will sort that out.
how many would you like? I mean, I don't wanna leave them all here if you're not gonna use them. Any
Thank
idea?
you, please.
6? That's great, okay.
Is it the same thing that the pink martini did last year?
Yeah, we brought Pink Martini in and it was, we're upping the stakes by quite a bit with Dionne Warwick.
Super, thank you.
Thanks again, Mike. We're gonna move along. We have Kenny LaPointe coming up next.
All right,
We're gonna just say.
Before we start with our next speaker, I got a request to remind all of you to make sure to speak directly into the microphone. So a little hard to hear on the remote, for the remote folks. Thank you.
Okay, so Kenny, sorry. Yes, Jurgen, come on up. Thank you.
Jurgen Hess, thank you, Council, Mayor. Thank you. That's great. I really appreciate that. Man Park is just quarter block away from us. We look right on it. And I'm glad to see that Mike and the Alliance Pub are doing this kind of work. It's really wonderful. A couple of recommendations of what I would have. My background is landscape architecture. I've designed a lot of these parks. And every time, if we didn't stub our toe with the locals, it was because we didn't involve them. So a recommendation I have, Forrest and a whole bunch of people that live right around that park, touch base and knock on the door and say, here's what we got planned. If you don't, I guarantee a couple of them, they'll get in your face. So it's just business of public involvement. It's a suggestion. There are probably not gonna be against it, but involve public. We all want to do that. So, one suggestion I would have for my design as a landscape architect, make sure there's an adequate space there for kids to play in the flowers and to pick flowers and for the dogs. The main use of the park is running dogs. Make sure there's some nature area there too. Design it into your park. The neighbors will love that. Some way have more than just grass. So I'm glad you're doing some soft surfaces. They need to have that for kids. So that's about all I had to say. Any questions? Okay,
Thank you, Jerry.
thanks.
Next, we'll hear from the Director of Mid-Columbia Community Action. Thank you for being with us, guys.
Thanks for having me. See if I can figure this out. So good evening, Mayor Blackburn, council members. My name is Kenny LaPointe. I'm Executive Director of Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. I think you all know what we do, but I'll remind you in case you don't. I think the last time I was here was probably the beginning of this year to talk about the Mid-Columbia Houseless Collaborative Strategic Plan. So this is a little bit of an update on some of the stuff that we at MCAC have going on. And as a reminder, we serve Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties. We provide utility assistance, weatherized homes, housing assistance. So helping prevent evictions, provide housing case management, and homeless services. So we run a couple shelter sites, and I'll talk about those projects here in a minute. So I always kind of like to remind folks of our mission as an agency, which is to build a better future for our community through partnership and equity-centered programs which prevent and eliminate poverty and houselessness. And this here is this slide is
We're not sharing.
Share screen. Can I drive for a second?
Go for it.
I think you've been sharing that screen.
Gotcha.
This one.
My kids were here, they could show me.
Okay.
There we go. That's working. Okay, so I like to show this slide to kind of give a vision of what we're trying to accomplish as an agency. We're not just running shelters to run shelters. We have a plan behind what we're doing, and our goal is really at the end of the day to get folks into permanent housing through our shelter system. We sort of start out with emergency shelter. We have our shelter site here in Hood River, the Hood River Shelter, which I'll give an update on. We have the Gloria Center, which I'll also give an update on. And then sort of the next step from there is transitional housing or transitional shelter. Many of you know that we've been working on the annex or the former Oregon Motor Motel. Some of you came to our grand opening that we held back in October. That's our transitional shelter where we work to provide housing case management services to folks who are there and get them placed in a permanent housing out of that site. And then again, the end goal is permanent housing placement. So we're trying to get folks into permanent housing so we end the need for shelter long term. So we shelter is a band-aid to our bigger housing problems that we're experiencing. Our goal is to get permanent housing completed. And we have a couple projects that we're in partnership with Columbia Cascade Housing on, trying to get those projects developed. We have the Chenoweth market site in the Dalles, which we are going to be applying for funding for this year. We applied for it last year, but it's fortunate that we got the Rand Road project done. We hope that we can get the Chenoweth market site done this next year. We also have, which I'll again talk about in a second, but the Gloria Center, our navigation center site, we're only using half of that site for the navigation center. We've actually subdivided that and we have another about 1.2 acres on that site that we hope to build permanent supportive housing on. In fact, we just a couple months ago completed a permanent supportive housing institute training and technical assistance program alongside Columbia Cascade Housing, the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority, and the Mid-Columbia Center for Living. And by going through that technical assistance program, that puts us in prime position. In fact, you have to go through that program in order to receive state funding for permanent supportive housing development. So just a reminder about the Mid-Columbia Houseless Collaborative. This collaborative is made up of over 40 different agencies from throughout the region. As part of the Houseless Collaborative, we have the city of Hood River, County of Hood River, Sherman County, Wasco County, and the city of the Dalles, with MCAC playing the lead entity over the Houseless Collaborative and really doing the coordinating. We set up an Office of Housing Stabilization. Our director of that office is Kelly Horvath, and then our resource development and community engagement coordinator is Sarah Kellums, who's sitting right back here. The collaborative has done some great work since we released our strategic plan earlier this year. Some of those accomplishments are going to be highlighted in a couple minutes with the Gloria Center and with the annex renovation. We've also been able to pull in quite a bit of resource through that collaborative, and thanks to Sarah's hard work on the ground, getting fundraising done, writing grants. I think we've generated more than $1 million in additional revenue from Sarah's work on resource development. In fact, just earlier today, we were at the Hood River Shelter site and were presented with a $2,700 check from our Photos with Santa event that took place a couple of weeks ago at the Hood River Hotel. And just kind of a reminder around the Houseless Collaborative, City of Hood River was part of the MOU signing. Each local government signed on to that MOU. We have an advisory committee that is made up of a member of each of those governments. Councilor Rivera is our advisory committee member from Hood River. And then Arthur Babbitts is the member from Hood River County. The goals in that plan are around shelter, services, housing, and advocacy, which we really feel are the primary areas that the collaborative should be focusing. So an update on the Gloria Center. I've been talking about this project for a couple years now, and there's actually stuff happening, which is very cool. This is sort of the original concept. You can see the architectural rendering of the project. This is going to be a multiple agency use space, so sort of a one-stop shop. We have multiple agencies that are going to be located in this site. Our main office in the Dalles will be moving to the Navigation Center once it's completed. The Mid-Columbia Center for Living will have an office there. One Community Health, we've actually built out a big parking spot for the La Clinica Mobile Medical Unit to come on site regularly. The Columbia Gorge Health Council and the Bridges to Health program is going to be located on the site. Inchiwana Housing is moving their offices into the Gloria Center. The Oregon Human Development Corporation will be moving their Dalles offices into the Gloria Center. And then the Department of Human Services will do eligibility determinations out of that site as well. So we're all sort of co-locating in one spot, creating easier access in the region for folks who want to come on site and receive services. Additionally, we have our emergency non-congregate shelter that's being staged there. What we're doing with that emergency shelter is a little bit different than what we had originally planned, which we had originally planned to have that shelter be a 24/7, 365-day shelter. With the acquisition of the annex, we have changed that model, and we're going with an emergency non-congregate shelter. Non-congregate meaning we're not putting everybody in one room, but they have their own space to go to. So we're creating this emergency shelter for both wintertime weather purposes as well as summer if there is heat events. We also were fortunate enough to receive it's called a CREP grant. I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's a community resiliency grant from the Department of Energy, Oregon Department of Energy. So we received that grant a few months back, which is allowing us to put a full solar array and battery backup system on this building, which will make it a community resiliency center. So if the power grid goes down, folks can come to the Gloria Center and have a safe place to go with the lights on and the heat on, or the cooling on, whatever it might be. So it's not a concept anymore. It's actually under development. And these are pictures from a couple weeks ago. So we've actually made progress since this time. In fact, that's the front of the entry to the building there. There's actually siding on that. We have I'm hoping most of our roof is on. We were delayed a little bit with the snow that we had about a week and a half ago, but half the roof was on at this point in time. All the windows are on. This thing will be fully sealed in within the next month, and they'll start doing interior finishings on the building. This was a pre-engineered steel building, so it kind of came on site like an erector set and just got put up within about 45 days. It became a real structure, which was super cool to see because it was just a muddy site for a long time that they were moving dirt around. So it's very, very cool to see this project get up and running. The other image there is actually the multi-purpose room, which is going to be sort of a conference room, can be used for community meetings, can be used for events. So we're looking forward to have some nice space to host community events at. The one picture is the parking lot, which we got that thing poured just before we had a freezing event. So we were fortunate to get that done in time because that would have stalled out some of the work going into the winter time, and the site right now would just be a muddy mess. So we're glad that we got that done. We did move the pallet shelters over to the site a couple of weeks ago, got those moved from the prior location. They are not set in the places they're going to be. They are tilted in the image that I'm showing. They will be positioned better once they're finally set down. And as a reminder, we have a partnership. We received some congressionally delegated spending last year to convert the pallet shelters into stick-built tiny homes through a partnership with the construction trades program at the community college. So the community college will be building those tiny homes in their climate controlled facility and then bringing them down one at a time on a jig and replacing the pallet shelters with those stick-built tiny homes. We will take the pallet shelters and we plan to put them into storage and use them in emergency response situations. So when we have our next disaster, wildfires, whatever it might be, we can mobilize the pallet shelters and take them to wherever the impacted community is and provide short-term housing. It could be for people who are displaced, or it could be for wildland firefighters who need a place to stay. And we also have our shower and restroom trailer that can be mobilized to that same effect. So we're really looking at preparedness for disasters. When I was working for the state, I was there during the Labor Day wildfires of 2020, and I was the Wildfire Recovery Council chair, and I can tell you it wasn't fun sitting there saying, we're not prepared for this. And I told myself I didn't want to be in that position and wanted to make sure I set things up as best as possible so that we could respond in an emergency. This is the front side of the building from the street. You can see that we have siding on it on that front side. The roof is actually going on in that picture there, as well as the insulation. So it's well underway, and we anticipate opening the Gloria Center in March of 24 and look forward to sending an invite to all of you. The next project, which kind of like snuck up on us, and it was a surprise, it was a blessing to get, but we were awarded a Project Turnkey grant earlier this year, actually at the end of 2022. We acquired the Oregon Motor Motel in the Dalles, and we acquired it on February 1st of 23. And since that time, we've been doing a large scale remodel on that facility. For those of you who came to the grand opening, you saw the sort of end result of that remodel. And we are very proud of this, this facility. It's the entry to downtown. It's the first thing you see when you come into the Dalles. I believe it's one of the nicest looking buildings in downtown the Dalles. When you come in, we wanted to make sure that we were living out that mission of creating a better future for our community and doing that through how we designed the build out of this project. We did everything from replacing the roofs to putting on new windows. We did a full stucco remodel on the outside. So the previous stucco was in really bad shape. Put new PDHP heat and air conditioning units in all the rooms. We converted a couple rooms to accessible rooms. These rooms were not accessible before, so we did some conversion on some rooms. And the really cool part about this facility is it's two separate buildings. And being that the buildings are separated, they look like different sites. They operate like different sites. This allowed us to put the first family shelter on our side of the gorge in the region. So we have families that have moved into the family side of that shelter. What's interesting is prior to us opening that family side of the shelter, we were placing families in this hotel through hotel vouchers. So now we have a much nicer facility. We also did new flooring, painted all the interiors of the units. We did bathroom remodels, some light bathroom remodels, a lot of plumbing work to get these units up to snuff and create a better place for folks to live. We have on-site case management services. The La Clinica Mobile Medical Unit is out there every Tuesday providing health services. Mid-Columbia Center for Living is hiring a couple caseworkers that will be located on the site. We're doing health plan enrollment. We're also now starting to build Medicaid for services that we're providing through community health workers out at the site. I'll tell you that this environment, this living environment, we're very grateful to have the pallet shelters, and we're glad to be operating those here in Hood River. This is a game changer for folks, and it provides a much more dignified living environment. It gives them their own independency. It gives them their own place to shower. They don't have to go outside in the middle of the cold and go to the shower trailer to take a shower or use the restroom. Anywhere between, at any given time, between 40 and 60% of our clients are seniors. And having to go outside in the middle of the night is pretty tough. I've noticed a physical change in the way people are who are staying. A lot of the folks in here moved over from our pallet shelters, and they physically look healthier. They're doing better. We have a food pantry that we've set up there. We're receiving food from Gorge Grown, and we're also partnering with Meals on Wheels to provide daily meals for folks who are at the site. So things are changing. I think we already have 6 folks that have transitioned, 6 households that have transitioned from the annex into permanent housing since we've opened up. In fact, we had a veteran household who transitioned the first week that we were there. Now, as far as the Hood River shelter goes, I think you all probably saw emails going out saying, we need staff, and hiring continues to be a challenge in the region. It's been a challenge at the annex as we're still looking for additional staff there. And we were struggling to get applicants for the Hood River shelter. We were planning on opening on November 15th. We're just behind that. So fortunately, we didn't have any crazy weather, and we were able to get open on November 20th, right before Thanksgiving. And we've been open since that date. Currently, the shelter, I believe we had 2 folks who moved out this last weekend. So we do have 2 beds available as of today, but we've been full the entire time other than that. Again, we have restrooms, shower trailer out there. We also have laundry. Our shower trailer includes a laundry room as well as showers and restrooms. We're also coordinating multiple different partners at the site, making sure that we're getting services to the clients. And again, our goal is to get folks into permanent housing. Under long-term opportunities here is to try and acquire a permanent site for a satellite navigation center where we could potentially move this shelter to, and also put co-located offices on that same site. Creating sort of, the more dignified living environment is our goal. We would love to do something similar to what we've done in the Dalles in Hood River for that sort of purpose. Also having a shelter. One of the things when I came on was advocated for a shelter being year-round, because we knew that if we were just providing 12 hours of shelter where there was no connection to other services, and you would end up serving those same clients the next season. We do provide services to get folks into permanent housing here, but if we had something that was longer term, it would give us more ability to stabilize folks. That's it for my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. I guess I should also mention, because I don't think we've talked about that, is you all probably saw the notification, and I just need to acknowledge it, that on June 30th of this year, Well, last winter season, MCAC had an operations agreement with Hood River Shelter Services to run the shelter site here in Hood River. On June 30th of this year, we completed a merger acquisition of Hood River Shelter Services. That was a collaboration that went on for a couple of years. Both of our boards were meeting over that couple year period to sort of stage out this merger acquisition that took place. It was very collaborative. The Hood River Shelter Services Board, we so appreciate their service to the community and running that shelter site for the time that they did. And we're glad to carry the torch forward. We do still rely on that board, as well as Sarah, who's now with MCAC. We rely on that board to continue to help us to make sure we're running things correctly, and they continue to help with things like facilitating meals from the many restaurants in Hood River that help support the shelter. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Kenny, for all your work and for being here with us tonight. Questions, comments, Phil? Megan?
One, thank you for being here, and every time you come, it's amazing to see the progress you've made. So thank you so much for all the work you and your organization are doing, because it is astounding to see the growth and the services being provided. I guess my one question is, obviously, so there's been all this work in the Dalles and kind of in your step stool of, you know, of growth into permanent housing. Some of that service is not in Hood River, but is in the Dalles. And I'm wondering, how are you seeing that interaction? Are people able to access those services from here? Are there needs that aren't being met that would allow people to be able to access that better?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for the nice comments. We have some folks who have come to the annex, for instance, to receive services and shelter. When the Hood River shelter opened, they opted to come back. And so there is a preference that folks from Hood River, their preference is that they be able to remain in the community that they're a part of. So that is why we would love to see a longer term solution. We currently have a lease agreement with the landowner of the existing shelter site. We've tried to make some moves to see if they would be willing to sell, but there's other plans in the future for the owner. So we would really like to find something here that we could, that's sort of like our next goal, is to get something going here that we could, build a satellite navigation center, have co-located services. We're partnering with Center for Living to do such a thing. We just need a place. We need a site that would work for it. It doesn't need to have building on it yet. It just needs to be something that we could plan out and build out. So we would love to be able to do something here. I mean, I would love to have another hotel because I think it works really well. And again, it provides a dignifying environment. But if we can find a site, we would love to do that here.
I was just going to ask about what are the steps to the Hood River Navigation Center, but I think you answered all that stuff, and just my appreciation as well. I think everyone on the council is that we have such a strong partner, and long roots and in the community that's great. So thanks.
And we do have some resource available to us right now to purchase the site. So yeah, we're looking.
Kenny, thank you for your leadership. Sarah, thanks for being here as well. I appreciate all the services that MCAC is doing out there right now and making a tremendous impact in those who are having some challenges. Appreciate that it's a centralized location where a variety of partners can come in. No one entity can do it all on their own. And the collaboration and just the partnerships that you're helping build are really fantastic. So we've already talked a little bit about how could we replicate such models here in Hood River. How can we as a council continue to support MCAC and the efforts moving forward?
Great question. I think Councilor Saunders asked this as well last time too. At some point in time, I think there could be a financial need for support. And to be honest, I'm a little hesitant to even talk about a future site in Hood River with the council because the public is out there. And, one of the things that you can do is support us when we have to defend it, because it's going to happen.
I think it's also incredibly important, even from coming from you, Kenny, that you can have all the services possible. And you still can't force people to tap into that service. So I think it's incredibly important to also just highlight some of the success stories that have happened. I know that the news Columbia Gorge did a really nice article on that veteran that, you know, I think sometimes there are misconception of what a houseless individual looks like, or that there's stigmas of what activities they choose to engage in. And that's also really important for all of us to be debunking those myths that take place, but that in general, we can't force anyone to tap into a service that they're not ready to do so.
Yeah, defend us, please. And this year, our most recent report showed that we've housed 95 folks in 2023 coming out of homelessness, and that was from the beginning of November. In 2022, we housed 115 people coming out of houselessness. And you know, a lot of the folks that we have, like at the Annex, at the Hood River Shelter, they're actively working to get into permanent housing. Many of them have jobs. The article that you're referring to is an individual who's staying at the Annex who works at Columbia Gorge Toyota. One of the, you know, they were sort of opposed to our projects at the onset, and now they have an employee who is a great employee who works for them. So we're really emphasizing, you know, getting people into permanent housing. We have folks who are still on the streets who are service resistant, and that's really tough. We want to be able to serve everyone, but we sort of have to hold the line because we have community expectations. When folks come into our shelter system, we want to make sure we have a safe place for the community, for our staff, and for the other shelter clients. And so that's really important that we maintain a safe, dignified environment for them to be in. But we've had so many successes, and we're working on, Sarah is actually working with our lived experience work group on highlighting some of those success stories, putting them on video, getting them up. We've made it, you know, really, we've tried to be really consistent with highlighting those successes that we've had.
My last comment or ask is, would you share those success stories? I mean, I've seen what that looks like, but it would be nice to share that with Jackie and then have that distributed through our social media platforms. I think, Sarah, whenever you start having those videos ready, that it would be important for folks to share that, because that could help with some misassumptions that people may create around what a houseless individual looks like.
Absolutely, and I know that we have some ready right now that are written stories that we did as part of the Houseless Collaborative Strategic Plan. So we have those ready, and we can make sure we get those over right away.
Other comments, questions? Thanks again, Kenny.
Thanks for having me. I don't know how to shut that off.
Okay, so back to the agenda. We are going to now take a break from City Council and open the Urban Renewal Agency.
All right, starting the Hood River Urban Renewal Agency meeting for December 11th, 2023. This one. Additions.
Yes, one addition. I'm gonna have a general administrator update after regular business and before items from the agency members.
Perfect. Righty, we have business from the audience, anything, Jen?
No, we do not.
Okay. Sorry, Tim, I had that stupid thing up. And is Heather or Ben online?
Heather is online.
Hi,
I'm here. Hi.
Okay. On consent agenda.
Sure. I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Paul and a second from Megan to approve the consent agenda. Any comments? All in favor, say yes.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none. Minutes are approved. Discussion, take it away, Will.
Sounds good.
Sorry about this. My sleep deprivation might be kicking in.
Oh, let's see, wrong one. I think we've got, yeah, agency governing, that's first. All right, thank you. Chair Zan Miller, members of the Urban Renewal Agency Board. The first item today is to queue up the discussion on reviewing the governance structure, bylaws, and agency administration. So this was a project that was included in the FY24 budget assigned to this new position that I hold. And then that was also prioritized in the 6-month action plan that we reviewed at last agency meeting. So to queue up the conversation, I'm going to start with some quick context and background, as well as the history here in Hood River, as far as how the governance of the agency has changed over time, and then get into some considerations and recommendations as to how we can approach this topic. So first, really, the concepts of the governance board and the bylaws and the cost allocation between the agency and the city. It's really a tiered set of authorities, all flowing from the city council and the ordinance that they passed, creating or modifying the agency. So the city of Hood River creates the agency itself and the membership of its board, but not only the membership of its board, it kind of creates all parameters of the agency. So for instance, the original ordinance for the city directed the agency to initiate the feasibility of a downtown urban renewal district. So it can create all the sideboards. Within the sideboards created by that original ordinance, the Urban Renewal Agency Board will then develop its own bylaws that might include an advisory committee, but is not required to. And then also work out a cost allocation methodology with the city, because functionally the agency and the city from an outside perspective is the same entity, right? Same building, same equipment, same staff. So it needs to be worked out how to split costs. So here in Hood River, the board was originally 3 city council members, Port of Hood River and Planning Commission representative, and then 1 additional appointed member. That was immediately changed 1 year later to include no city councilors, but keeping the Port of Hood River and Planning Commission representative. There was a major restructuring in 2012. After the year after the Heights District was first created. And that's when the city council came on as the governing board, along with 2 Hood River representatives. And the Planning Commission representative was then moved to be on the advisory committee, along with appointed folks on the advisory committee. And so at that time, it was thought that having a board of all elected members would be able to kind of give more scrutiny and better oversight to staff, with appointed members maybe better as in an advisory committee capacity. So now we're in 2023, and it's very akin to 2012. We have a brand new district that was created in the west side. Its maximum indebtedness eclipses all prior districts combined, and also now includes areas of unincorporated Hood River County, which we've never operated before. Heights District is increasing in activity, moving from a planning stage to an implementation stage, and the downtown and waterfront districts, which originally held Port of Hood River properties, those districts are winding down in their activity. So it's a natural time to review the governance structure. And in addition, our MOU for cost sharing between the city and the agency is about 15 years old, and also could be due for a revisit. So the recommendations in your packet recognize that tiered structure of authorities, starting at the highest level and then moving down. We recommend first discussing governing board membership, and then once governing board is settled upon and agreed upon, then that governing board would then work on their bylaws, organization of advisory committees, And then once that's in place, everyone who would basically have a stake in how costs are allocated between the agency and the city would be there, able to opine on a reasonable cost allocation methodology. So, could happen as quickly as 4 meetings or longer as needed to have discussion and engagement. So tonight, we have some information in your packet. So hopefully to give enough background discussion, and I think some members have thought about this, some already, but if there's any initial policy preferences that anyone has tonight, that's useful to get out into the open, because that will help focus future meetings. There's really innumerable combinations of ways that a governing board can be put together and administration can be set up. So it's not like there is, a discrete number of alternatives we can bring to you. So knowing those policy preferences ahead of time would be helpful. And then also get input on what is the desired level of stakeholder involvement. This is to some extent a pretty dry topic. It's pretty bureaucratic in nature. So it doesn't, I don't know if elicit much sort of community natural community engagement, but I'd like to know, do you want us to engage the boards of overlapping districts, advisory committee, general public, kind of what is the level of input and engagement you feel that you'll need in order to engage and make decisions on these topics? Yeah. So with that, I'll just open it up for discussion.
Cool, thanks, Will. I have a question to begin with, and then what I'd like to do is go around the horn, and then Will and I talked, and I've been mulling this for a while. I have a suggestion. We'll see how that comes out as part of that discussion. But the first question is, since the governing board format is determined by the city council, is that not something that should be on a council agenda versus the agency agenda?
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, so the next step would be a city council item, not an urban renewal agency board item.
So the agency board will recommend to council to say, we're recommending we change to this format, basically.
Yeah, listening to the input of the board tonight, and then moving forward, the next step would be a city council. It's really the city council's decision of how they want to take that input and what next steps they want to take.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So let's get gut level reactions and where you think we should go, and we'll start with Megan and then go to the Zoom folks at the end. Megan?
Baseline, with the founding of West Side and apparently it being 10 to 15 years, if not longer, out of date, I think this is a very good time to review all of this and make sense. The phased approach certainly makes sense. General policy stuff, I saw that a lot of places don't necessarily have an advisory board from the community, and I think that's been valuable for us to have. I do think, especially given we've got unincorporated county, engaging the county probably on our board, and potentially like Kat, I know Kat's comment when we were founding West Side was making sure they stay engaged long-term. I see value in bringing partner agencies along on our ride. I don't know that I've thought much beyond those things, but there's my thoughts.
Cool. Oh, nothing to add at this moment.
Yeah, just echoing what Counselor Saunders says, I think it's been incredibly valuable to have, some level of ad hoc committees that do include community members to help advise and to make sure that they're staying in the loop of what's going on, and then helping disseminate that information out into the community. It would be nice to have a conversation to see, as we look to continue to expand our partnerships and collaboration, is someone from the county willing and interested to do something like this and joining? I would also really love to create space for Will. You've been doing a lot of research. You've been looking at different cities and whatnot. Like, what are your overall recommendations? We've never had an urban renewal director, and now we do. So what do you foresee? How could this work out best as well?
Right.
I concur with my fellow counselors. One thing that I've always found interesting is that this by only incorporates one overlapping jurisdiction, not the others. Is a form of involvement. I would like to see the other districts also get involved in this conversation. Perhaps not on the governing board level, but just as a collaborative group. Most other cities run this through their city council, and the city council makes all the ultimate decision, which is fine. To me, the governance and the governance load would make sense to keep it at that level, and then incorporate everyone else's input on an advisory basis.
Excellent. Heather, any thoughts?
Hi, well, I was just thinking, once the waterfront is totally out of the picture, I just wonder, if having two port members on the board is necessary.
Mhm.
I do like the idea of including other partners in the community to bring in input outside of city council as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And thanks for having the Christmas tree in the picture too. And last but certainly not least, Tim?
I agree with all that's been said. Phased approach sounds good. Advisory committee, yes. I can see the efficiency in being able to hold these concurrently with city council meetings and kind of having all elected officials be on the governing board. So that way decisions are not necessarily a two-step process. So those are my thoughts.
Cool. Thank you. And so for me, you know, and especially given Will's report, where most cities do just use the city council as the administration board for the agency, I was going to suggest the same thing that's been suggested, which is simplify the agency membership to just council, and then really work on the advisory committee stuff to be more tightly integrated in with council than the advisory role to staff, which is pretty much what it's been implemented as now, and use that advisory thing to pull in CAT and the county and the other agencies that are around. And Heather, if there's a future waterfront discussion, then of course the port would be part of that as well. So keep agency super simple. And then, you know, two steps down, we would work on how do we optimize the public input and the partnership input. So, Megan.
I am gonna respectfully, I think there's, because you would have how you interact with and coordinate like a public input committee and other elected official partner agency committee, I do think is different. And so I do think combining those can create some mess. And I do see some value in having some extra folks up here besides just us.
So you think having an agency board that's beyond council is
that includes some other elected officials, you know, like we do right now, is my thought. Yeah.
And do you have a thought of?
I mean, county and CAT are the two I'd recommend, potentially parks if given West Side, but I think that's, you know, I wasn't prepared for full debate because I thought we were just saying, yeah, the process looks good, but I think that's open to conversation, including from the agencies of do they want to be involved, but I think there is a different scale of if you're working with folks that need to get completely up to speed of what's the public process and what does this mean, and your job is really to talk to your customers and your neighbors, you know, on the heights, is different than what someone from the county, like what the county is going to be bringing to a meeting.
And your gut feeling is that the advisory committee wouldn't?
I think it'd be very hard to have a committee that can meet both of those purposes well. But again, I mean, I think we're starting a conversation, not.
I'm just looking back and saying, okay, we've had, 2 other people on the committee for, my whole council life, and it hasn't led to deeper discussions or what it is similar to you. I mean, so since 2012, this was, so I guess I'm not convinced that it would make a difference as far as the depth of the discussion to add to the agency board. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm not sure that we haven't had a depth of conversation with our port commissioners on here.
Oh, that's fair enough. So any other thoughts? Gladys?
Yeah, I just want to hear from Will and like, what are
Ah.
your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think this discussion was really helpful. I'm hearing phased approach is good. Let's come with several different alternatives when we really dig into this. And then it sounds like this might be more than one meeting where we kind of think through alternatives. And then if we do want to go with an alternative that's bigger than the city council, we decide, how to do outreach to those overlapping districts. So steps are forming in my head. This one is not something where I could make a recommendation, especially at this board membership level. It's so purely policy driven with no particular best. I think it's a continuum of like the pure efficiency model is city council only, and it's also the most common. And then as you move, across the continuum, which I think I could sort of point out logical discrete steps in that continuum when we talk about this again, is more additions, more advisory committee members. It just comes with that push and pull of kind of focus in decision making direction versus casting the widest net possible and bringing more people along, which brings more complication along as well.
I see 2 choices. One is we could make a motion to recommend something to council now, or we could just kick this to council. I think that we have unanimity that there will be a, no one's arguing that we should keep it the same as what it is. So we could, put it on a future council agenda to start it from here, or we could, if people thought that was silly, we could just make a motion to make a recommendation, and then council could still decide to choose to talk about it differently. So you want to kick it to council, I assume?
I mean, the suggested motion is just we begin the phased approach. Like, you're wanting to actually decide things tonight? Because I feel like we haven't had the conversations or.
It would also be nice to hear from from the county, right? Is anyone there willing and open to starting this level of collaboration and partnership before we make a recommendation to council to, this is how we should do it moving forward?
Paul, go ahead.
Heather, as the person at this moment at greatest risk of not being on this board anymore, you said makes sense to not be the port. Did you have any thoughts about which agencies might make most sense to include?
Well, I liked the idea of like parks and counties since
Parks and County, great, thank you.
yeah.
I think to Megan's point, just doing the motion as stated gives you stuff to do, right? Will?
Correct.
All right, that's cool.
Then I'm gonna move that staff begin a phased review of the Urban Renewal Agency's governance and administrative structures as presented during tonight's meeting and as informed by tonight's discussion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Megan in a second. Great. Any other discussion?
I would just like to add that I mean, obviously the port would want to be involved in any waterfront discussion.
Makes perfect sense. All in favor, say yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't see any, and I vote as in approval as well. So there you go, Will. Next item.
Great, next item is an informational session on jurisdictional transfer. Let me, which is important in the Heights. Let me get that queued up. Yeah, so jurisdictional transfer. As we finalize the Heights streetscape plan, there's often questions raised about jurisdictional transfer and its process. So I wanted to have this informational item to kind of set aside some time to make sure just some basic information and basic shared understanding, and also engage in questions if you have them. So I'll talk about background and reasons for jurisdictional transfer, the basic framework of jurisdictional transfer, with the proviso that every jurisdictional transfer is unique, and then talk next steps and future considerations to keep our eye out for. So perhaps going too far back in history, but to the very beginning, in 1917, 36 original highways were designated, most of them unpaved. And preceding the state highway system, there was a system of market roads. It really is that concept of this is for commerce, this is for moving goods and people in between communities.
And if I could just interrupt, if you want to go east of the Dalles in Wasco County, there's a ton of market roads. It's super interesting and evocative to be out there. Like, oh my gosh, Mr. Rentham, like hauled the hay up this. Okay, like it feels. I feel that market road thing.
Yeah. So now designated highways approach nearly 200 routes, and they're governed by the Highway Design Manual, which is about 1,400 page of design standards meant to have kind of a uniform and consistent look and feel, so people can safely traverse around the state and kind of understand how the roadways work. And so here locally, the Hood River Highway was designated as a secondary state highway in 1931, so Route 281, and it was previously West Side Market Road number 3. And kind of all this history is just to illustrate that it's ever changing, and highways go in and out of being designated highways, and it's all based on their evolving use. So reasons why you would transfer a roadway. This is in the handbook for transferring roads from ODOT. If it supports the statewide movement of goods and the state is better able to modernize and preserve the roadway in a manner fitting in inter-community transportation. And then the reason to transfer a roadway back to a city is if it's primarily for local uses and not needed as an essential link to the highway system. So how does that correspond to our local conditions? Well, this was an image looking north along 12th Street, looking towards the intersection of Pine, back when this was a market road into town. And so today, it's now not a road leading into town, it's a business district of its own, with restaurants, retail, professional services, serving primarily local needs. And it's also not the most efficient truck route any longer. So if you route to the interstate anywhere east of the Hood River, you're going to get routed onto Oregon 35. If you try to route to the interstate west of Hood River, you'll probably get routed onto Country Club Road. And even if you route from the southern city limits of Hood River, your fastest route is still to take Frankton to Mount Adams. And this likely contributed to our finding during the traffic study that we did for the Heights, that only 2.4% of traffic volume going through the Heights was heavy trucks. And also, as a side note, I think emphasizes the importance of Mount Adams and Cascade intersection as we move into the West Side District, just how important those improvements will be. So no longer really a thoroughfare for movement of goods, but it also now is becoming local vision is coming to fruition. It no longer prioritizes just the needs of throughput, but our Heights streetscape plan balances the various user groups that use the district. And this local vision does not meet the state highway standards in that 1,400-page manual. So we could individually look for ODOT design exceptions, but that will complicate and slow the Heights implementation process, as will just generally needing to permit projects on someone else's roadway versus we can move quicker if it's already under our jurisdiction. And then lastly, we have funds available through the Urban Renewal Agency that show not only do we have a local vision, we have the means to make it a reality. So kind of that last check mark with the state for, you know, why this should be not a state highway, because we can really make the local use tangible. So now getting into the basic framework. So that's kind of the check marks that all the reasons why this should be transferred. Now, what does it look like to transfer? So first you define your boundaries. And we think that a logical boundary is from just south of Oak Street to just north of Pacific Avenue. That avoids any islands of remaining state highway kind of being just detached from the other state highway system. It avoids responsibility for the traffic signals at Pacific and Oak. And it encompasses the project area. So if we did this transfer boundaries, it would add 1.3 miles of roadway to our responsibility, which is about a 2.2% increase, although very heavily trafficked roads. Step 2 is to document maintenance responsibilities. And this is still being done. This is in process, but things that we know that we do is 1, we enforce parking restrictions. Our public works crews clear stormwater drains and catch basins. They paint the markings for parking, they street sweep, and also they plow and sand in partnership with ODOT during the winter. But that really, I think, notes kind of that local versus state difference. If you look at our snowplow map, 12th and 13th are priority number 1 streets. On ODOT's map, it's a service level D because their priority is the interstate and then 35 and then Highway 26. You know, they'll get to 12th and 13th when convenient. And yeah. And that really also corresponds to maintenance work. So this is a secondary highway, which means that's where it ranks and how it scores when it's fighting for ODOT maintenance dollars and for improvement dollars. And I think that's why you see kind of 12th and 13th in the state that they are, is just that they're not gonna score highly when ranked on a statewide system, but they obviously locally are very important to us. So with all this information, we perform cost analyses. So what would it cost to bring the roadway up to a state of good repair? What are ODOT's existing capital improvement plans? Like what are they already planning to do on that? And cost that out. And then we can also estimate how much ODOT is expecting to spend on maintenance. And bring all that together to get a dollar amount, a discrete dollar amount, to be the start of negotiations. But it's very important to keep in mind that ODOT doesn't have a line item for jurisdictional transfers. You know, if this rate ranks lowly on their maintenance list, they weren't going to maintain it anyway. So there's not really money to transfer to us to maintain it. But it's a good starting place for negotiations. So these negotiations can be quick, or they can last very long. For Oak Street, we were able to transfer that in less than 6 months. ODOT retained the responsibility to do ADA crosswalks and also to do one last overlay, but no funds exchanged hands. So I think that's kind of on the fastest track. To a few examples of other tracks, Sutherland's process took 3 years and really even started visioning a little bit ahead of that time. To transfer 82nd Avenue in Portland took 4 years, and that was really unstuck by COVID relief funds that were designated by the legislature. $80 million came in to bring the roadway up to a good standard, and that's really kind of what finished that negotiation off. And then in Tigard and Halla Boulevard, they're 4 years and counting. Tigard had a bill in the legislature that required ODOT to bring their roadway up to a state of good repair, transfer it to Tigard, and allocated $15 million to do so. And that bill was left in Ways and Means at the end of the session, so it did not become law, and leaving Tigard without really a next step. So our next steps and some of the future considerations given this information. One, we are in active communication with ODOT really from the beginning of the Heights Streetscape Plan. We've been keeping them in the loop and meeting with them, keeping them abreast of what's going on. We had a meeting with them in November to present the preferred concept plan and also just kind of get them ready get ready, we want to engage with you soon. And now we're working to schedule initiation of scoping negotiations. So basically creating an MOU, deciding, we both agree that we're looking for an agreement. And that would come back actually to the city, because that's with the city and ODOT. But also there's this separate track of a jurisdictional transfer advisory committee. So this committee was created by House Bill 2793 in 2023. So that was the same session where Tigard's bill died in committee. And I suspect these two are connected, that maybe the legislature didn't want to take these on an ad hoc basis and thought, let's let Tigard wait and let's create a standardized process to handle these. This jurisdictional transfer committee will create an application process, accept and recommend, jurisdictional transfer applications from local jurisdictions, and make up to 3 recommendations to the state legislature for appropriations in even numbered years. So conceivably, they would make their first 3 recommendations by September 15th, 2024. They've only held 1 meeting so far, and it was basically organizational setup. So who's going to be chair, who's vice chair, how we make decisions, things like that. But I'll be watching this closely and making sure we're on the ground floor to get in there. This is not the sole and only route to a jurisdictional transfer, but this appears to be the designated route set by the state legislature if we want direct legislative appropriations. But that doesn't stop us from continuing negotiation on a concurrent track with ODOT, otherwise and immediately. Yeah, so that's kind of the state of staff's understanding today, but looking forward to answering any questions you have.
When we talked earlier, we talked about, kicking off that cost analysis thing. Will you come back to us and ask for approval to do that in a future meeting? Is that the?
Yeah, I think even if it doesn't rise to the level of the contract authority, like just keep you in the loop for sure. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Let's. I like when we go around the horn, just I remember to get the people on Zoom. So we'll go the other way. Tim, you're first.
Will, as always, excellent presentation and analysis. I super appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cool. Heather.
Oh, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay.
The legislative route with the advisory committee, if they're only doing 3 of them every even number year, and who knows how many apply across the entire state, would this be of adequate size to be approved, or do we want to make it bigger? This is not a question you have to answer. It's a question I'm just putting into the ether of the universe.
Yes, and I would only be able to answer by, reciting what's in the bill that created the legislative committee, but it didn't set any of those boundaries or preferences about size.
Yeah, I find the number 3 to be somewhat arbitrary in nature in terms of the number of jurisdictional transfers they're going to approve in any given year. But
Counted the number 3.
yeah,
But maybe a really small one can just be like, we did 3 and one was only 5 million.
yeah, I understand they're doing that because of all of the requests and the budget and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I get it, but I was just voicing that observation. Thanks.
Thank you. In number 3, subsection B, it talks about the ODOT Surface Transportation Improvement Plan. In the conversations with ODOT, have they expressed that there's already plans for 12th and 13th? Any sort of projects that we need to be aware of was my first question.
Yeah, so there, we have our capital improvement plan in the back of our budget. So ODOT similarly posts theirs publicly, so you can go in there and just control find Hood
Okay.
River. There's the elevated sidewalk project on May and 13th, but then there's also a lot of general projects that kind of just say improvements to OR 281. And so I think maybe one way to approach that is to say this is X% of Oregon 281. So give us X% of that money that you had for the whole route. I don't know. That's just kind of early thinking.
That kind of answers the following question I had around the funding. There is a section here in the engaging in negotiations of ODOT potentially giving us money, and then we could complete the work as part of the Heights Improvement Plan overall. But overall, it sounds like we still don't know, right? Like we still don't know what that.
Oh, what they would owe us? No, we need to actually perform the safe good repair analysis and.
I had another question and I forgot it, so better come back.
Nothing to add at this time.
More overarching question, but like, so we do a jurisdictional transfer. Does ODOT still have any role in reviewing or controlling what we do? I just feel like they've burned us on so many intersections before. Like, does this get them out of the way and we can actually do what we want, or?
I know that it will need to be continued to be signed OR 281, and it must continue to support the dimensions of freight traffic. I believe other than that, it frees us up fairly clearly, but I don't want to say that as an absolute term. I think we'll have to really sort that out through the, that will come to light through the negotiation process.
And that's the stuff in the letter from ODOT that's in the packet.
Those are all the ways that the Heights GTA plan doesn't
the
meet.
letter from ODOT.
This is the current list of everything that doesn't meet their standard, but I guess I just want to make sure if we're doing this, that we don't then do, whether it's Second and Oak or Rannon Cascade of here's a decade of continuously redesigning every 2 years because something's changed and you have to pay 2 million more. And like, if we're gonna do this, I want to make sure it's worth it.
It will avoid. ODOT will no longer be administering our projects, so that stops that issue of them coming back saying it's this much more money, it's this much more money. I guess instead it will just be our public works director saying it's this much more money.
Right, but is ODOT going to be able to come back and say, oh, it doesn't meet the design anymore, you need to redo it?
We will figure that out during the negotiations.
That's just my big question of like, what does this actually get us? So.
Anything else? Was there anything else that you were hoping to?
Just information
from us? Cool. Given that, I think we're to the. Oh, Heather, sorry about that. Oh, yes, she said no. But Heather, you do have an opportunity.
Thank you. I don't have any questions.
Okay, cool. All right, we added a new item for you.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just stay standing here. So you said a quick administrator update. You may recall in the 2022 Affordable Housing Strategy, one of the recommendations was to provide direct construction subsidies either to the developer or for offsite improvements to help support housing production, preferable housing types. But the Affordable Housing Strategy didn't put any sort of meat to those bones. It's kind of left up to us to figure out that program. So I was recently approached by Willamette University to ask if we had any projects for a Willamette MBA team, and I thought this might be a good one for them. So I put in a project proposal to research what has been effective in other cities as far as developer incentives that have actually produced additional housing production in that 80 to 100% of affordability index that isn't typically directly subsidized by public entities, and was selected. And so we're going to get a Willamette MBA team to start work on that in January. end in April. And so they're gonna research it, tailor any recommendations for the Hood River context. And then we can, accept, reject, or just kind of take that for what it is and see if we want to incorporate it into the West Side 5-year action plan.
Cool.
Yeah.
Agency items. Megan?
Nothing,
Oh, nothing. Gladys?
nothing from me.
None.
Heather?
I was just thinking about my previous comments and thinking we have a meeting tomorrow for the port, and I will talk to them about if anybody has really strong feelings about the port staying on the urban renewal board, and I can email discussion back to the board.
Awesome. Thanks. Anything else, Heather?
Nothing else from me.
Cool. Tim?
Nothing for me, Mark.
Okay, sweet. And I don't have anything clever to say, so. So the Urban Renewal Agency meeting is adjourned.
Good. We'll reconvene city council. I think we're at discussion items. Is that right, Abigail?
That is correct.
DLCD grant for code audit, E. Nielsen.
Thank you, Mayor. One of your critical projects for this year in the work plan was a code audit, development code audit. And it included a number of features, phase 1 being the audit itself, phase 2 being an amendment. Kevin was here earlier this year. We presented a scoped project for you, and then we proceeded to apply for funds from the state, from DLCD. In September, we were notified we were chosen from the competitive grant to receive, we think, about $100,000 to perform phase 1. Within that, we had already budgeted funds for the project. By winning this grant, we were able to take those state funds and use that directly. I'd ask the state how would they, just some questions about billing. Typically a contract of this size and a project of this size, we would do an RFQ. We would go out and seek competitive bids and then choose a contractor. The state has a list of pre-qualified contractors. It's negotiated for projects such as this. We have the opportunity to utilize the state funds, have the state do the billing through its selection process, and then proceed to phase 2, utilizing city funds, which may occur in the next fiscal year. We have a recommendation based on what we've learned so far, based on the selection of contractor and their pre-qualified list, to go with the state pre-qualified contract list. We think it has the opportunity to utilize some of the scale economy of the state. We utilize their billing sources. We don't have to go through our own competitive bidding process and the advertising, the cost to do that. And really MIG, who's the group that was going to be assigned to us, is probably one of the foremost authorities in the state on this matter. They certainly have the most experience with Hood River in the past 10 years, being involved not only in the short-term rental program, the housing needs analysis, the West Side area concept plan. We use them for our overflow services. So they actually are when we can't handle the current workload, we have a contract with them. And so in terms of the fit, it's a logical choice. And then our recommendation includes an opportunity, much like we did with the Heights, to return at phase 2, when the city's funds will be used to either evaluate the scope, consider a sole source contract, or if we don't like the work that's been performed to date, to actually go out to an RFQ at that point. So that's a recommendation. Happy to answer any questions you have. Really, we wanted to make sure that before we got to phase 2 and we started spending city funds, that this was not a surprise, that you all were comfortable with the approach and took your direction.
Thank you, Justin. Questions? Thank you.
I guess just clarity, you said this is like, they assigned us someone from the the list of pre-approved, or did we get to select from the list? Of
We
pre-approved?
got to select from their pre-qualified list. Two of the groups I would not have selected whatsoever. Just because the difference in familiarity and fit with the city. Again, neither of those groups have ever worked here. And I have the group on the other hand that we've had success with and also really knows this community pretty well. So actually they have to use the code. So that is a huge difference. Nothing against the other groups, it's just the level of qualifications and fit were radically different. So.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other strings associated with using these funds?
Yes, always. State funds always come with some money. They will work with the scope. They use our scope that we prepared for you all as the basis to the grant. But yeah, there will always be some checks and balances that come with state funds, but nothing that we haven't experienced before.
It's within the scope of this project.
Yeah, we scoped the project before we pursued the grant, and I think that's a really important sequence. Rather than manufacture a project based on our grant funds, you can get into that can get tricky. So we were here first. We would have proceeded with the project as scoped with the city funds if we weren't granted them funds.
Others? Gladys.
When do we expect phase one to be accomplished or to be completed? And then when do we expect for phase two to potentially start?
Phase one, we're hoping a January kickoff. We've already started talking with the state. They're prepping final bills right now. So I would consider that imminent. And then I think for the next one. So part of what we had talked with the state about is if there was residual funds.
Can you repeat the timeline for 10?
Oh, I'm sorry, at the end of the fiscal year for phase two. So call it July. So we'll spend 6 months and audit, and then we'll reassess, not only for cost, but what we learn. Phase two from the amendments should be informed about what we learned in the audit, and then we'll proceed at that time.
Great reminder. So yeah, I'm just saying right now, I think this is great for phase two. I definitely would want to do what we did with the Heights of come back and review the scope and everything. And I think that was really valuable for keeping us informed along the way.
Anything else on this topic? Great. Thank you, Dustin.
Do we need a motion?
Yep. I move we utilize the state's pre-qualified contractor and funds for phase one of the development code audit and revisit the project scope prior to the approval of a phase two development code amended contract.
Moved by Paulson,
Second.
second by Saunders. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. City manager comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My only comment is I would expect that we will not hold a second meeting this month as it would fall on December 25th.
You get the morning off. You want the whole day?
And City Hall will be closed on that.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Excellent. Thank you.
Committee reports, Tim,
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Megan,
Nothing.
Mark.
The Visit Hood River is continuing their equity training thing, and I went to the second of 4, and it also is good. And if other folks are interested, I think the next one is next week, and I can ask for materials to be provided through Abigail to the thing.
What is the next topic?
No, I'd like it to be a surprise. So I don't know. That's all I have.
Gladys,
No, Kenny was here and gave a great update.
Grant.
Yeah, we had the Region 1 transportation meeting. We bumped a lot of the meat of that meeting into January. So we're gonna have another meeting in January. A lot of that meeting was taken up with presentations for the I-5 Interstate Bridge and a couple of those kind of informational presentations. So there wasn't anything especially new there. The main concern is still funding.
8.5.
Many.
Any update from our little teeny 7-digit bridge? 7-figure, 8-figure bridge?
9-figure bridge.
Right.
No. Working on making sure funding, all the financing for it is square. We can make sure all of our, make sure we can have all the bills paid. 'Cause, anytime you're passing grants or legislation, all that fun stuff, you have to make sure that the cost of the project and the critical path of any kind of build or capital improvement workflow matches up with their funding sources. So that's where it's at right now, and that's the fun thing.
Could the interstate bridge highway go to Pacific Avenue? That's my. Probably not.
Okay.
Okay.
Also, I serve on the Bridge Authority as an individual and not a person here. So there is no committee that the city of Hood River has on the Bridge Authority.
But I'll trust that you
I
will
just-
update us when you have
Just
updates.
updated out of a courtesy. Yes, I did.
Right. All right, I don't have any committee reports, mayor comments. Tim and I were talking, well, actually emailing. And there's a couple of energy council projects that we'd like to see if we can't move along. And I'm bringing this as a gut check to see if there's other interest. Tim and I talked specifically about electrification of our vehicle fleet and electrification of our parking spaces as they get built. Is there interest on the council for those to be sort of to receive a puff of energy to get more on an action plan? Just wanted to check in. I'm seeing some nodding heads.
That could be a great topic to talk about during our strategic meeting, which is a month from now.
Yeah, I actually wanted to have more of a discussion with all of us at the strategic planning around just climate goals in general. And would second that we have that more in-depth conversation when we all get together and talk about what are goals and outcomes going to look like.
Yeah, I think it's just in furtherance of our resolution that we're still wanting to do. So having concrete steps that ties the climate resolution to actions is something that we should be doing every day. And I think we are. So this is good.
Tim, anything to add?
Nope, I agree. I think we should discuss.
Great, thanks. Also on sort of moving forward specific issues, I had my first meeting of this version of my advisory council. Jackie and I have started calling it the Equity Advisory Council. We've included other historically marginalized groups, including former tribal councilor and Gorge Commission Chairwoman Karina Miller. Very pleased that she zoomed in from Warm Springs. We talked about a number of things, and we're couple updates for y'all. We have got sort of the rolling schedule. It's going to be every other month, maybe on the 4th Tuesday or Thursday. So we're going to kind of get them mapped out. We've just reached back out to the folks who participated. We had a nice discussion. And specifically, I asked for their advice. I said, I think that it would reduce a barrier to equity if the mayor's salary for a subsequent mayor was higher than it is now. In fact, quite a bit higher than it is now. Like, what about 10, 15, 20 times higher? Go from 100 a month to 1,000 or 1,500 a month. Would that allow access to a wider range of possible mayors? And they seem to agree with that. So I would really like to not miss this budget cycle. In case we have another mayor in a year, we would at least have the money in the budget to cover that cost. And if I get reelected, we can give that money to Kenny or something. So that I'd like to raise up that specific topic. It definitely falls in our equity goal, but I don't want to miss the budget cycle. So nodding heads here. Gladys, go ahead.
Thank you for restarting that group again. I wonder if any of them would be interested to join our strategic planning meeting. As we move forward, trying to do things different. I know that there were specific water and fishing concerns that were brought up by tribal members during the time that Councilors Ann Miller and you, Mr. Mayor, connected with them. So I wonder if it would be a good idea to invite those partners within the equity group to potentially attend and at least just hear the conversations taking place. And I'm certain if they had any recommendations of things that were missing, that we could absolutely have that conversation.
Thank you, Gladys. This is a new idea. I haven't thought of this. I don't know if I'm ready to say, yes, let's invite them on the 6th, but I do know that our facilitator, John Morgan,
John Morgan.
John Morgan
Correct.
is planning to reach out to some folks ahead of that meeting. Remember, the focus of that meeting on the 6th is annexation specifically. I don't have a clear idea of how we can open up the whole goal setting, because then we have to say, well, we can't just pile extra stuff on Abigail's third hand. Like we have to take some things off. So I don't have a clear image for how we change the makeup of those goals, but I could imagine suggesting that Mr. Morgan get some input from my advisory council, or, and I'm here, this is new and I'm just talking about it. The purpose of this advisory council is to advise the mayor. So I, to some extent, feel the responsibility to solicit their input and include that in the discussion. Whether we grant them an actual seat at the table or seats at the table is hard to decide, because it's always a balance of access and manageability. So that's my answer to that idea.
Yeah, and I hear that. And I think as we talk about climate overall, and that's a conversation we want to have during our strategic planning, that it also is important to bring other partners such as weatherization. Weatherization is something that is definitely a climate goal. If we have partners that are doing this work or those that are facing some of these challenges, that would be important. And if we need to prioritize and focus more weatherization projects, that input would be really beneficial. So if it means you connecting with those individuals and getting their input prior to us meeting, and then you can bring that information, it just gives an opportunity for us to have more thoughts and opinions from those who are completing or doing the direct service.
I will say that the Energy Council is directly involved in a weatherization program. So we should probably talk about that before going too far down this road. They're great partners.
Yeah.
And they do have an equity focus too.
Yeah. And climate goals is such a broad topic, and it really does hit on all of these points.
And Mayor, I would caution you about the hopefulness of being able to donate your salary to an organization, because I've tried to do that with my stipend. I have had no success.
Guess my imagining would be the rule we would set is subsequent mayors would get the new salary. So I'm not subsequent. So I never get it. I don't have to donate it. It's just in the budget still. And maybe that's wrong, but that's how I see it. Thank you, Tim, for the heads up. Okay, those were the mayor comments. Council comments. Grant.
None.
Gladys.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you for bringing up the conversation around paying our mayor more. That I'm hoping that can help diversify or to just give other individuals an opportunity to step up to the plate. So hopefully all that goes well. I do just want to take a moment to highlight and celebrate us and staff. We talked about the middle housing code that was put in place, and I just want to take a little snippet of Abigail's city updates since August 24th, 2022. As a point of reference, Hood River has typically permitted 50 dwelling units per year. So far, 6 units have been completed. Those are 2 projects. There are 3 units under construction, and there are a couple units in the process, 8 units on 22nd and Belmont, 10 units on 16th and Belmont, and 6 of 18 units are also in the process. When we adopted the middle housing code, we knew that it was going to take some time, and it is really exciting to see some outcomes and deliverables that are happening. And I'm certain that with even more time, we will continue to see the number rise. I also just want to point out that this is still middle housing and not necessarily low income. Heard that there are other conversations around how do we make more of the low income housing happen? I just wanted to take a moment to highlight everyone and celebrate. Woohoo, go team.
Thank you, Gladys. That's great. Mark.
This is Christmas project week. Just under 1,000 applicants, so 980 something as of a week ago. They start packing toys tomorrow. We're packing food on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday, and handing out stuff on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I think it's sort of a double-edged thing. It's great to see the community step up and do that, and it's a little bit sad that there's 1,000 families that are going to be helped. So that's good.
Thanks, Mark.
Well said. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Kim. I know she's
Yeah.
stalwart. Megan.
I had a vague idea I just wanted to talk about with everyone, but and this is kind of combining my two hats, but as I've kind of been watching water issues around the state in the last decade and a half, I've started to really, and of course with the city council brain of like seeing how they potentially could affect cities. I'm getting interested in maybe opening up some conversations with folks I know, whether it's LOC or at the legislature, to kind of talk about that and how the city, how I think all municipalities could play into that. And so I can do that as an individual, but I kind of wanted to gauge some interest level in me talking about, showing some specifics from our city or talking about how it's something that has come up in front of all of us and yeah, kind of your thoughts on that general idea. And I could form this into something better if there's interest, but it's just a vague, like something I'm interested in jumping into more. And I don't know if that's just me individually or.
I would love for you to do that. I actually met the LOC water lobbyist when I was in Atlanta, and I'm like, you should talk to Megan. I support that.
Yeah, it's something, we've seen the warning flags way up in the future, and the more we're ahead of it, the better. And we have an expert amongst us, so that helps.
I agree again, and I'll make the joke about Abigail's third hand, as long as it's you as the water czar and not one more dang thing for Abigail. So I'm hearing us agree that please go forth with our
Okay,
blessing.
I will flesh that out and certainly keep you guys abreast as that occurs.
Thank you. Anything else, Megan?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Kim.
I'm glad we're talking about water. I hope everybody had a chance to look at the materials that Abigail sent out from Tetra Tech. I think it's worth reviewing if you haven't. And I think it's worth having a follow-up from them and a discussion at a future council meeting.
Thank you, Tim.
Speaking
Anything
of
else?
clean water.
I'm sorry, I missed the end there, Tim. Anything else?
Just talking about tribes and the need for clean water.
Yes, indeed. Okay. I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. Anything else for the good of the order that I have overlooked? We are adjourned. We will see you in the new year.
Happy holidays.
Bye, Tim.
You too.